Hey, and welcome to this week's coaching video for those of you who are going to be facilitating discussion in off-campus small groups through Dayspring's ministry on the week of March the 16th, 2014. This is a video designed to help acquaint you with your discussion guide, your Going Deeper guide, and maybe to give you some things to think about as you get ready to facilitate your small group time this week. So thanks for leading your small group. Thanks for watching this video to get equipped. Get your handout in front of you. You should have a copy of that by now. Valley should have sent that to you. Get a copy of it. Go ahead and print it out. Get something to write with. If you haven't done that, pause this and go do that now. But if you haven't, let's talk through it together, okay? Look at your handout. This week, let me give you a heads up, kind of an overview of what you're going to be talking about and really what you're trying to lead your group to, okay? This week's small group discussion has to do with what it looks like when we live in such a way that we're not calling the shots with our time, but we're letting God call the shots with our time, about God owning our time. And really, here's the big idea of this whole discussion that you're going to be leading, is that we, all of us, are living presently in a unique season of life. The time that we've been given throughout life comes in various seasons, and we're all in a particular season right now. And the folks in your small group may very well be in different seasons of life. Some of you may be in the same season, but we're all in a particular season of life. And here's the reality. The Bible speaks of a spiritual enemy that we have, and we know that part of his MO is to kill and to steal and destroy. So God has given us some time, and God has given us a season of life that comes with unique possibilities. The enemy's desire is to steal that season from us, to distract us, to get us going in different directions to where we lose this particular opportunity. And the reality is that this season is going to come and go. Before we know it, this season will have flown in and flown away, and the possibilities and opportunities that come with this season will be gone. So our enemy wants to steal that from us. And this small group guide is to help us realize that, but also to help us realize that we need to do something proactive about it, that what we need to do in this season, if we realize that we're kind of wasting this season of life, there are one of two things we need to do. Number one, we need to cut some things out of our lives that have taken away our ability to make good on those opportunities, or we need to add some things to our life. So we either have to cut something out that keeps us from fulfilling the opportunities in front of us, or we need to add some things that push us into those opportunities, because it's a limited season. Satan wants to steal it from us. So that's what this lesson's all about. And hopefully by the end, you and your group will have done a little bit of personal reflection, some self-evaluation, and come to the realization of some things that you need to cut out or add to your life. And hopefully by the end, you all will have determined to do that and encourage one another in that regard, okay? So that's the big picture. Let's look at the specifics on your handout, all right? Discussion point number one, that's our recap question that you always start with, where you recap what you heard Sunday. It takes you back to the passage from Sunday, which is Ephesians chapter 5. Consequently, those are also your memory verses for this week, at least two of those verses. Pretty much that passage talks about making the most of our opportunities and kind of the technical language of the New Testament, especially if you're reading a different translation. Maybe your Bible says that you need to redeem the time. That's the language that's being used here. We need to take the time that we've been given, the season that we're in, and bring redemption into that, all right? Now, discussion point number two. This discussion point is really where you begin to do some personal reflection and personal awareness. It talks about, you're asking the question, what season of life are you all in? So your group's going to talk about it. What season of life are you in that comes with these unique possibilities? Maybe your group has a season where you have teenagers in the home, or small children in the home, or maybe you're in an empty nest season. Talk about the season you're in. Allow everyone in your group to do that, and talk about the possibilities that come with that. Maybe you're in a time of season where you don't have children yet, or you're not married yet, and talk about the opportunities that come with that. All right, so you're focusing more on opportunities here than challenges, because every season comes with challenges too, but we're talking about the opportunities, the unique opportunities that comes with that season. So in discussion point number two, everybody's going to kind of reflect on that and talk about that. Look at discussion point number three. Now, this connects you specifically with some things from the Sunday sermon and some pictures of redemption that we see throughout the Old Testament. A few of them that you see there. One that has to do with relational restoration, one that has to do with sacrifice, one that has to do with freedom from sin's power. Those are all images of redemption that we see in the Old Testament. Look at this discussion point. It says time is something we struggle with, especially prioritizing it. It says, as you think about the pictures of redemption that we saw from Sunday, what are some specific ways that you think your calendar needs to be affected? So again, you're really pushing this whole personal reflection thing even a little deeper now here, and you're really just plowing the ground of where you're going to end up in a moment, all right? And here's pretty much the point of where you are so far. Is the way that you're using your time in this season, is it bringing about these redemptive pictures? Is relational closeness the result of the way that you're using your time? Is helping other people, being liberated from sin's, slavery, is that something that's being produced as the result of the way that you're using your time? This is really what you're getting at here. So by this point in your small group discussion, there should be a little bit of inner tension that folks in your group are feeling, in the sense of, man, I'm not necessarily using my time the way that I ought to, because really all of us should come to that conclusion. We can probably all do better. So at this point, your group should start feeling a little bit of that tension. Now, discussion point number 4, that's going to motivate you even a little more, because James is going to tell us if we know something that we should be doing and we're not doing it, that's sinful behavior. So by now, you should really be motivated to say, golly, there are some things with my time that I need to start doing. It's time to start doing them. All right, so that's where you are at this point. Now that kind of brings you into the application of it all. Look at discussion point number 5. It says, review the final 2 points from Sunday's message. Those 2 points involve A, us either eliminating some things from our calendar, or B, adding some things to our calendar. In light of the way that we know that God wants us to use the time that He's given us, and we know that He wants us to redeem our time, to bring redemption into our time. Since we know what those pictures of redemption look like, what do I need to cut out of my calendar that makes room for that? Or what do I need to bring into my calendar that makes room for that? The reality is it's going to be a little bit of both and. Probably our calendars, we're going to have to cut out some things and replace that time with some new things. So you're going to review that point. And by the way, all throughout this handout where it says, review the pictures of redemption that we talked about Sunday, or review those final 2 points that we talked about Sunday, you be sure as the group facilitator to take some good notes in the sermon, just in case no one else in your group took good notes. And when it says review the last 2 points, make sure that you're not scratching your heads as a group going, well, I can't remember what those 2 points are. If nothing else, you write them down so that your group can review them, okay? Look at discussion point number 6. This is where the application should really start to flow. Look at this. It says, so what is it that needs to be eliminated from, or at least minimized in your schedule? What is it that needs to be added to, or at least increased in your schedule? And this is the point where you as a group leader really push this out of people here, okay? And what I mean by that is camp out on this point, and let's really, as a group, let's really be honest here and vulnerable a little bit and say, you know what? Here's something I really have to stop doing. Or, you know what? Here's something that should have been doing all this time and I haven't been. This is the point where your group should, I don't want to use the word confession here, but this does need to be a time where maybe you guys are starting to really confess some things that you need to start doing and not doing. It might be that some of you start saying, I've got to put down the electronics, or I've got to get away from the TV. It may be that some of your group saying, I've got to start going with my kids to the children's ministry events, or I have to stop doing the overtime hours that I'm being offered. This really needs to be a time of honesty and vulnerability here. So when I say push it out of your group, I mean do what you can as a facilitator to make sure that your group at this point doesn't just skirt around it or have a chance not to have to deal honestly with this, because this is too important. The enemy is trying to steal this season from your group. It's trying to steal this season that they're in. And this small group discussion could be a turning point for some folks to say, all right, I'm drawing a line in the sand, and from this day forward, I'm going to start cutting out some things or adding some things. All right, so push it out at this point. Make sure that it gets worked out. All right, discussion point number 7 is extra motivation. as if at this point you're not motivated to cut some things out of your schedule or add some things to your schedule, that discussion point ought to do it, because you're pretty much going to ask the question, if I do this, what are some good benefits that I may see? And if I don't, what are some negative consequences I may have to live with? And by the way, speaking of negative consequences, a great cross-reference passage is in your daily reading on the Thursday reading, Ecclesiastes chapter 6. Ecclesiastes chapter 6 is pretty much the journal entry of someone who wasted a lot of time in life. And as you read Ecclesiastes chapter 6 this week in your daily reading, you're going to read really a very jaded tone of someone who's coming to the end of life with a lot of regret. And this may be a point to say, you know what, y'all, if we don't start cutting some things out and adding some things that we know that we ought to, we may end up sounding like this. And you may just, at this point, open up Ecclesiastes chapter 6 and read part of it to your group and close it and say, do you want to sound like this at the end of your life? You know, I really don't. So let's follow through on these things that we've been talking about, okay? So that might be a good segue into your final and closing discussion point. Discussion point number 8, it's just a nice finish. You're going to be directed to your memory verse, as well as you're going to notice that you're instructed here to finish your time by praying for one another, specifically praying, asking God to help us to redeem our time. So this is your small group discussion. Boy, this one really steps on some toes, I got to be honest, because we all have a bad habit of wasting time. We all do it. And what this lesson is helping us realize is that we really don't have time to waste. God has given us a perfect amount of time, but that season's going to come and it's going to go. Our enemy's trying to steal it from us. So let's do something about it today. Let's come to the realization of what we need to be doing. Let's make the commitment to do it, and let's move forward, and let's use our time wisely. All right? Listen, thanks for listening in. I hope this has been helpful to you. Look through some of those daily readings ahead of time, by the way. It may give you some extra food for thought. It may give you some extra things to input as the group leader. But I'm glad you listened along. I'm glad you're leading your small group discussion this week. Hope this has been helpful. We'll see you Sunday.